Yeah.
Hello, this is Chipicon, and this is the Changing Times, Changing Worlds Wednesday show, Otherworldly, where we talk about interesting things that are of interest for those who are interested in the paranormal, supernatural, and other spiritual practices. I decided to do one on, because it is so close to various New Year customs around the world. And then I looked back, and last year I did one that was on superstitions and customs that were aimed at giving you a better New Year. On account of 2020 was kind of hard for many of us, and 2021 just seems to have been blurred in. So
Yep.
if you want to go back and listen to the one on the folklore for a lucky new year, then it's on the channel. I can put the link in the chat, but that won't tell anybody who isn't here. But if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, look at the 2021, or no, I guess it would be 2020, just before New Year's show, and it is called Folklore for a Lucky New Year, and you can find that on and enjoy that one. I will try to cover all the cool stuff without being too redundant. The focus that I have is basically liminal new time. Now, last week we talked about the solstice. This week we're talking about the new year. And the very fact that there are New Years scattered all around the year is an indication of how arbitrary time is when human beings try to put a handle on it. We decide, okay, this is the beginning and this is the end, but that is arbitrary. You can pick any time you want to decide that. And some people decide life comes out of darkness, and therefore the day begins at sunset. And some people feel the day begins at dawn. And of course, with our current way of running things, it starts at midnight, which seems a little odd to me, but it's all in what you decide, where you decide. The people who have it in what I would consider the fall of the year, the Celtic tradition of having Samhain, or more specifically, the new moon just before Samhain. Was it just before, or was it just after? It was the new moon closest to Samhain, according to Ellen Everett Hopman, who is the druid and knows more about these things than I do. They start their days at the end of the year. They're coming out of darkness. Whereas I would guess, from what I looked at, the majority of calendars started in at or around the spring equinox. You have the Songkran and Kabnissen, and that's Assyrian, and the Songkran's Buddhist. The Myanmar, they celebrate Singran. Vasaki, Sakranti, and just forgive me for butchering these names, because I just looked them up, but they're just a lot of them start in around the spring of the year, which is why they put the Annunciation at the spring of the year on the 25th of March in the Christian calendar. And that is all just a whole lot of, in the spring, it comes out. And yet at the same time, for instance, the Thingan is a water festival, and some of them are in around the spring equinox, what we would consider the spring equinox, because it's the end of their harvest season. So it's all really local. The calendars are based on what's going on in your culture and in your life. I'm going to repeat what I think is a very funny story. The Romans had a calendar that was supposed to have come from Numa Pompilius, who they're for one of their early kings, but that was switched over by Julius to what we call the Julian calendar. Oddly enough, the early Roman calendar had 304 days. What, you may ask, happened the rest of the year? I don't know. But the Julian calendar added enough days to make it 364 days with intercalary days. And then and switched New Year's. They had New Year's at the beginning of March because Mars was their god and it began in his month. They only had 10 months in that first one, which you've ever wondered why it goes September, October, November, December, and and the various other months were named after gods and goddesses. They'd started out being named by the number of the month. They only had 10 months. I always wondered why there was an 11th and 12th. But what's more amusing is it was a very strong tradition in the Roman Republic. After they dumped their kings, they elected their consuls, and the consuls were the ones who were running running Rome. And what they were doing was they would go out and conquer the people next to them, and they conquered the Latins, and then they conquered the people north and the south and north. And they get spreading out until it got really inconvenient around the time of Julius Caesar to get to wherever you were conquering, because their whole plan was to conquer new land, bring their people, bring all of their rich stuff in, take their people as slaves, build some amphitheaters and roads and things, and turn them into Romans. And so Rome just kept expanding, but it got really, really hard to consul get out so far as it was very hard to get the consul to wherever they were killing people. If the election was at the beginning of March. So Julius cleverly put it in the month that was sacred to Janus, who was the god of new things. And so he switched it to January and put New Year there. They couldn't move the election. The election had to be at New Year's, so they moved New Year's. I'm sorry, I just find that, why can't we move the election day? We can't, absolutely, it has to be a New Year. Okay, fine, we'll move New Year's, and then that'll give us 3 months to get out to Germania or Britannia or wherever or Persia or wherever they were conquering somebody. And by that time they were going to Egypt. They'd taken over much of Greece, and it took them a while to get there. So, but it's arbitrary. That essentially shows this is another liminal time. It's a time of changeover, but you can decide when you want it. And of course, nowadays once you're used to something, you figure you can't change it. But yeah, you can. We have another one that happens in the fall is the Jewish calendar, which happens at the new moon after the equinox, Rosh Hashanah. Otherwise counted as 163 days after Passover. Okay. The French Republic put their calendar, the fall equinox as their New Year's Day. Of course, it didn't last long. It went from 1792 to 1804. But I mean, let's face it, in our world, you have the fiscal year starts October 1st. You have the school year starts used to start in September. I still think of it as starting in September, but it's August now. why, you may ask, was the school year from September to May? Was because they needed the young men and the children to help with the summer chores, the harvesting, the working in the gardens and on the farms and the fields. They needed the farm hands. But once they got the harvest in, they could let the kids go to school and learn something until they needed them back at work again. And that was why the school year was set up the way it was. That's a pretty odd thing, but it's totally practical. The judicial year, Congress has they all have different times when they're starting and finishing, but New Year's has a lot of things in common. And I could run through this list of names of holidays and butcher them, but why? I'd rather talk about what they do have in common. And what they have in common is an awareness that it's changed. You have more ability to direct change when it is a natural time of change, when there is the inhale before the exhalation, when something is finishing up, you get to start over. Some of us are old enough to remember the concerns about in 2012, the Mayan calendar ran out. It finished up one long cycle. And then it became, everybody was like, oh, it's going to be the end of the world because the Mayans ran out.
We should be so lucky.
No. Or as a friend of mine who'd gone to a shaman conference asked one of the Mayan shaman, he said, what's this deal with the Mayan calendar? He said, oh, well, when we come to the end of one long cycle, we start the next one. You know, you take down your old calendar, you put up the new one. Just because it was carved in stone and it lasted a very long time doesn't mean that that's any different. Well, duh. But this is somewhat typical of the modern Americans' idea of history and how things work. As you read the first paragraph and then assume you know everything that was in the article. That's very, very cynical of me, but sometimes it feels like that. Yeah. So that's what happened. I'm very fond. They had a post that was going around at the time of Marvin the Martian. He was looking through his telescope and saying, where's my kaboom? Isn't there supposed to be a big kaboom? Yes, and just as big as that kaboom for Y2K. Gee, you had spent, programmers like my husband had spent the last 3 years making sure they found all the little hidden things to make sure there was no Y2K bug. So, but these things are, and okay, let's go for another big one though. I cannot ignore the Chinese Lunar New Year because it ought to be explained, because a lot of people don't get, it's like, why does it keep jumping around? It's a solar lunar calendar. The new moon that they celebrate, that starts the Chinese New Year celebration, is the new moon, which is after the winter solstice new moon, or the new moon that comes after the winter solstice. So you get the winter solstice, it's got to be the 21st, right? Or 20th, 21st, right there. But there you have the solstice. Then whenever the next new moon is, that's the moon for that section. The next new moon is the beginning of the new year. And so they start with the Lantern Festival, and then they have something that goes for each of the 7 days. And now, of course, because longer your civilization lasts, the more you pad your calendar, your holidays. So now it usually lasts about 14 days. So So they call it the Spring Festival. We call it Chinese New Year because we're a bunch of people who think that the world revolves around us. Is there a nice word for those people? American. Yeah, it's not a nice word. Okay. But many of the calendars, the Mongolian calendar, the Korean calendar, the Tibetan calendar, the Vietnamese calendar, they are all going to be based on the second new moon after the solstice. So now you know. So in case you're trying to figure out when it's time for Chinese New Year, that's where. Now, let's see, but so that's kind of in the spring. Then you get your spring equinox bundle. You get in April, mostly in the Middle East. Then I don't know, Sri Lanka is actually pretty Eastern. It's not quite. They say, when's the Hindu New Year? Well, every little group of Hindus has their own calendar, so they tend to
the big one, Diwali, was like a month and a half ago.
Yeah, Diwali is the new moon. Diwali is the new moon at the 15th day of the 8th month. They had their months start on the full moons. Isn't that cool? 5 days. The first one is for cleaning. The second one is for decorating. The third one is for rituals. And then the fourth and fifth one are for celebrating with the people you love. The fourth day being for romantic celebrations, and the fifth day being for kids, which is, I think, a really lovely way of doing it. And including a day for cleaning and then a day for decorating makes sense to me. And that is one of the things they have in common. Almost every culture starts the new year with "you should be clean." There's a lot of cleaning and cleansing rituals. There is a lot of, you should start the new year as you would want it to continue. You should start it with no debts if you can. But in the old days, if you only ever bought what you could afford to buy, then it was easier to settle your debts. And then you just, your new year is, you can start fresh. Almost all of them have some suggestion that you have new clothes. This is reflected in the solstice customs, which from the Icelandic lads, where the Yule cat would come and eat you if you didn't have new clothes. So you'd better have some socks or new underwear or something, so you wouldn't be eaten by this big troll cat that came down. But many of the customs have to do with cleaning and starting fresh. The food is definitely a thing that is treated symbolically. It certainly is one of those things, feasting, because you want to start the year off the way you want to continue. Feasting is a big thing. Not in America. Gee, what a surprise. So we stay up till midnight, and at that point of changeover, you want to be doing what you want to be doing. So that's why we kiss at midnight, because Americans think with their trousers. So because everything that is good is romantic. But no, you want to, but food, most cultures are like, we want to have a feast at the changeover time, and either if it's the night before, often the night before is for drinking, and that point is often for loud noises, because as people who do magic now, when you're doing magic, the first thing you do is you banish anything that's bad. and then you cleanse your area, and then you initiate whatever it is you want, and then you ward it to make sure that nothing bad comes back in. This is essentially what's going on. So on the day of New Year, almost every culture is very big on attracting that which is which they want. One of the things that you see almost universally is beans or peas or other legumes, which represent coins or money or prosperity. Anything you eat is going to represent prosperity. Sweets are very, very big because you want your year to be sweet. But the beans are everybody. I mean, I grew up, unfortunately, with a grandmother who came from the South, and they wanted us to eat black-eyed peas. I'm very happy eating black beans and rice. Hopping John, fine, but they didn't spice it in our family, and spices were frequently part of it. That you want your world to be spicier, so that make it.
I've found that American Protestants do not understand the concept of seasoning.
Yeah, their idea of seasoning is ketchup,
or pepper, and that's it.
But or if you look at the Jewish New Year, apples and honey. It's but also anything round, anything ring shaped. You have a lot of ring shaped pastas and breads. Greens represent new life, and in the modern world they represent money. Anything that is gold, also cornbread down south, Irish or Italian and cabbage. Irish or Italian custom, New York, they eat nothing that flies or swims away. Jar of new mustard, new loaf of bread, and a package of salt. Who was it? I think it's the Irish. Take and beat a loaf of bread against the wall. Not quite sure what that is. Maybe it's feeding their housewives, but or softening them up. I don't know. But the Chinese, they're very big on noodles because they represent longevity. The longer the noodles, the better. Eggs are big. They often will put eggs, and the noodles will have a lot of eggs in them, because eggs are round. Anything that represents the cycle of the year and things that are round that can represent that. As a matter of fact, in Rosh Hashanah, one of the things is taking pieces of bread and throwing them into running water to cast off the things that, once again, it's get rid of the things you don't want, and bring into you the flowers, the fruits, the sweets that you can get. Midnight, open the front door and back door, sweep out the old. Why we did that seems more like dealing with the wild hunt. Yeah, remembering that the wild hunt was the spirits that were passing by, and I have done the wild hunt, so it's in the backlog of our things. You wanted the wild hunt to pass you by, so that is something that you didn't want them to stay, unless you go back to the very early Roman versions where it was Dame Abundanza or Hebondia who was coming by, and if you left food out for her and drink out for her, she would bless you with abundance. So the switch over to the wild hunt being somebody who's coming in to punish you for your misdeeds is a Christian variation of it. So, and probably comes with, when you hear the wind whipping through the woods, when you live anywhere where there are woods and it gets cold in the winter, and of course, I am not going to be one who denies the people who said they have seen the wild hunt. So let's just accept that, or not. You can reject it. But at midnight, you've got, by that time you've cleansed, and then you banish, you make loud noises, or you make music. A joyful noise is a good thing, but fireworks is our modern view of making a big bang, and at the same time seeing something beautiful. There were in the Chinese, at the full moon before New Year's, they would take down the image of the kitchen god they had hanging in their kitchen, and smear his mouth with honey, and burn that, and so that when he went to report what had gone on that year to the Jade Emperor, he would only speak sweetly of you. And then in the when you've cleaned up, then you put up a new image of the kitchen god in the kitchen, which is kind of cool. The clothing is important. You cannot. I still enjoy that in South America they like to wear white clothing, and they also like to wear different colors of underwear depending on what you're trying to bring in. And they like to go jumping in the ocean if you live near the ocean, which if you're wearing a white trousers and shirt, a white dress, and red underwear, or yellow underwear, or green underwear, depending on what you're trying to attract, then I assume that everybody can tell what you're trying to attract, because wet white clothing is going to definitely show underneath. But jumping the ocean, whether it is a polar bear swim in Boston or Anchorage, Alaska, in which case it is an indication of your cojones, or whether it is jumping in the ocean because that's part of your New Year celebration in Brazil, that would be pleasant jumping. In Siberia, oh my God, in Siberia, they take a Christmas tree, they jump into a pond, they take it, swim down into this nearly frozen pond, stick the tree in the dirt at the bottom, go up for air and come down, and then they dance around the tree underwater, and then they bring it back up again. That is some really hardcore, we're going to dance around the tree stuff. And I'm hoping that they have saunas to get into after that. I don't know. But getting rid of old stuff, one of the things that represents getting rid of old stuff, there are places in South Africa and South America where they take furniture or things that they don't want anymore, and they toss it out of the windows or off balconies. And as a matter of fact, it is essentially dangerous to walk around cities in Buenos Aires and places like that on New Year's Eve, because you might get hit by a falling refrigerator. In many places, if you want to travel, you will pack a suitcase and you will take it out the door. What you want is things that are going to come in. You're basically acting out what you want to happen. You want to have more money in the new year. Some people will put money on their front steps and with a string tied to it so they can pull the money into the house. So there'll be more money coming. Other people will simply take money out of one pocket and put it in the other pocket, simply to be putting money in their pockets. Many cultures will have gifts of money on the new year. Yeah, it's like Boxing Day, only more generic. Everybody wants you give money to the children, you give money to the your workers, you give money to your family, because it is something that you want to giving them, making sure they have money in their pockets. It is a good thing. And in China, they wrap it, they put it in red envelopes, because red is a healthy and lucky color. And there's a lot of, sometimes it's pure symbolism. For instance, in the Persian New Year, it is where they have 7 dishes on the table, all of which begin with whatever is Persian for the letter S. So 7 dishes, all of which start with, and it could be the spice, or it can be the spicing, or it can be the food itself, but they all start with the S sound. In China, they will put their fu sign upside down because the sign, which is cut out of red paper, the word means poor, which the word, and they use red because it sounds like the word for prosperity. And the and a lot of the things that they do are based on the sound of the word. That if it sounds like another word in the same thing, you avoid the thing that sounds like something bad, just as you would avoid the bad thing if there's a homonym, then you avoid that too. You avoid anything that might make you that you don't want to bring in. For instance, when you're giving gifts, you don't give clocks or watches because those might represent time passing. You don't give sharp objects because it might cut your friendship. You do not give shoes or sandals because they might represent the person walking away from you. You don't give mirrors because I'm not quite sure why that is. Whereas in, could be the Persian New Year, they put a mirror on the table as a sign of reflection. Oh yeah, here's a note. It said they don't serve pears. They use oranges and apples because they're red and sun-like. But they don't serve pears because the word for pear sounds like the word for separate. And they don't give handkerchiefs because the word for handkerchief sounds like their word for goodbye. So there's your homonyms. And so that is, but yeah, the mirror stands for reflection, and reflection is something that is considered good in some places. Now, where was it? Reflection. One of the one of them, I'm not spotting it in the notes. The whole day is spent in silence and in reflection, so that you're supposed to reflect on last year and the new year that you're going to have. Justify not giving you money. Well, that's because modern people are not aware of the magic that they are pulling off. Idiots. But so many of them do get most cultures exchange gifts. Oh, is it one of the Indian groups? Thai, the Sangren Buddhists. When they see each other on New Year's, they will tie a string on each other's wrists, and you're supposed to leave them on until they fall off naturally. And people will end up, popular people, I guess, will end up with 25 or more strings on each wrist. So I guess if I was living in that culture, I would look around for some really interesting looking string. So it'd help being that's one of the ones that's in April. In the Sri Lankan New Year, they will, one of the things they do is to celebrate is they boil milk in a new earthen vessel until it boils over, which is a sign of prosperity. Let's see, the Tamil New Year they have a they have to wear new clothes, they eat sweets. There's purification and temple visits, and as well as games and hanging and general frivolity as well. So you have this combination of, yeah, we've got to do the religious thing and get blessed, and then we're going to have fun. So that's a thing. What? All right, I'm gonna ask you, people who actually have shown up. Do you have any New Year's celebrations that you have found or you know about that I have forgotten to mention?
Well, I know one that we inherited from a friend of ours is I believe it's Scottish. It's the concept of the first foot.
Yeah, supposed to talk about
where
that.
I end up going outside shortly after midnight and knocking on the door and coming in, and Kathy gives me something to drink and something to eat, and I give her a silver coin. We've got a bunch of them sitting in the china cabinet where we put them, and that's supposed to bring luck into the house. I also believe I have to come in on my left foot.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not a problem because I almost always step off on my left. It's habit.
Well, that's cool. The term for New Year's Eve in Scotland is Hogmanay, and also is referred to as Daft Days. And yes, not only it was involved, they had, slow down, you can do it. Cleaning was part of the ritual, and the first footing was very important. As a matter of fact, there were some semi-professional first footers, because the first person you wanted to come in that new year, that's by side of coming in on the left foot, was they were supposed to be dark, which I suppose if you'd had a lot of dealing with Vikings, you really didn't want. They were not as eagerly sought after. Wasn't supposed
Hopefully
to be a
my
woman.
gray will cover.
And they were supposed to be young men who were well, you take what you can get, but at least you're male. One would hope that it was no longer that. One of the things about Scotland was there was a whole thing which I haven't been able to track down, but when you were cleaning the fireplace, there was a way of divination by looking at the pattern of the ashes that was in there. And I haven't been able to find out what those things were. I expect like tea leaves or coffee grounds or many other things. You saw symbols and read and associated them with what symbolism meant in your culture. But you read the ashes in while you were cleaning out before. You had to have the house clean. One of the things these days, which show how daft the Scots are, is they make little wire round balls, cages, which they hang from long poles, fill them with things that are flammable, and parade down the street carrying these fireballs. Many people will toss something at people's doors for good luck, whether it was food. I believe in Greece they would smear butter or yogurt on the door, which kind of is different. I'm sorry, you just spend your entire day cleaning. The idea of having somebody throwing food at your door, it's kind of gross. But this was called seining or blessing. Another thing that they did, which might be easier or harder, depending on the way you look at whether or not you want to drink it, you got magical water from a dead and a living ford. In other words, any place or river or bridge or ford where both the living and the dead would cross. So basically, one that was close to cemetery. If you knew the dead would be carried across it and the living crossed there too, then that was the water that you would want to collect to sprinkle around the house and then take a drink of. Now, I'm not sure anybody would want to drink most waters from wild rivers around year, but it was this water was sprinkled on the house, it was sprinkled on the hearth, it was sprinkled on the people, it was sprinkled on the livestock, it was sprinkled on the trees, and that was a thing that you could do. But it was both the living and the dead. The water that both of them had crossed over was one of the things that you used to cleanse. Again, we are talking about cleansing. You cleanse and then you bless. And gee, that sounds like a fairly common magical practice. They are, I was surprised at how many of them began on the new moon. I kind of think of well, I suppose new moon's got to be the beginning because it grows and then it passes and goes down. You get other things. You do want to start with food on your table and money in your pockets. You want to start with a clean house. In theory, it will be, your day will continue with the way it does. Speaking of round things, the round foods, there's one that is well publicized these days, which is eating 12 grapes at the stroke of midnight, which I enjoy the divination bit where if you track them, if you're eating these one grape with every 5 seconds, if you count them at least in your head, January, February, March, April, and if any of the grapes is sour, then that month should be sour for you. But then again, I'm a collector of divination trivia. And what other bizarre things? Okay, anybody else got any New Year's traditions they know about?
Well, I also make Hoppin' John, or sort of a Hoppin' John, black-eyed peas, bacon, a can of Rotel, mixed tomatoes and peppers, and some rice for
At
us to
least
eat
you
on.
season it.
Yes.
Yes. Unfortunately, in my childhood, it was a can of black-eyed peas because they didn't have them up here in the north.
Well,
but have come from the south. They had to have them.
I'm actually using 2 cans of black-eyed peas because I don't feel like soaking the bloody thing.
And then you season them.
Yes, I do.
Whereas my mother did not season them, they were for nothing but luck. And there's greens, and the greens, if you put enough bacon in them, that is one of the things. Some people will eat a chicken because it's golden. Other people avoid chickens because you want things like fish or pigs that a pig roots forward. A fish only swims forward. A chicken scratches backwards. You don't want to eat anything that moves backwards because that would indicate that you would be moving backwards. So pigs, good. Beef, okay. Chickens, don't be eating the chicken unless of course you're talking one of those Purdue where they fed them lots of marigold leaves to make them come out nice and golden. But eating lots of coin-shaped things, eat your cookies, and eat your greens, and if you add bacon to your greens, then of course you're adding the pork, and that's good luck. Perhaps not, if you're Jewish. And remember, you had your apples and honey back in September, October.
I'm also going to feed Kathy a few figs at the beginning of the year because I like them. Figs are sweet. They're full of nice little seeds. And I've got a nice bag of mission figs, which needs to be eaten.
Oh, yes. I like figs. I didn't like them when I was a kid, but I do now.
In the German tradition, we give each other little marzipan pigs because
the pig.
there's the German way of saying you're lucky is Schwein gehabt, which means you had pig. So if you give people pigs, they start out the year lucky.
Oh, what a great!
I remember from when I was really, really little and we were living in Holland, there were marzipan pig heads with a pfennig in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been the same thing.
Penny. Yep, the lucky
Yeah.
penny.
Yeah.
Gotta understand, I was 3 at the time, so I really didn't care. All I wanted to do was eat the marzipan.
And you see here it's got a 4-leaf clover and it's got a lucky
ladybug.
muchikipien.
Oh,
Ladybug?
I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I got this at the Polish deli today.
Ah, well, you
They
gotta
have everything European.
good for them. It's good to have them. And this is the time of year we're all scrambling to get the traditional things.
Mhm. Yep.
Well, I
Yep.
got time to travel up to New Britain, or as we call it, New
My
Britsky.
yeah, my family of origin, they say every year my mother said we should really cook a carp for New Year's Eve, and she never did.
Oof.
But carp, it has to be carp. But what she did do was she made a pink potato salad for New Year's Eve. Small pieces of potato and bits of small slices of pickle and small bits of salt herring and bits of pickled beets for the pink and bits of apple. And apparently that was supposed to be lucky. What it definitely was a sovereign remedy for hangovers.
Oh, yeah.
So you served that New Year's Day.
Mhm.
Yeah. Drinking is something that is nearly universal, except in cultures where drinking is not acceptable. Drinking is a thing that
They just double up on the sweets if they can't have alcohol.
Yep, that's true.
I'm thinking of the end of Ramadan, which is basically you better not be diabetic or you're going to end up meeting Allah the next day from your heart seizing up.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that has got to be because the Islamic calendar shifts every 11 days. They will get in your lifetime you'll have New Year at every time of the year, depending on where it is that year. And but when they fasted during the day, I just sorry for these women because they were cooking all day. Because when it's like, okay, we're fasting all day, so we're not going to be working as hard during Ramadan, and then they would get to the sun would set, and the women would bring out the feast, and the men would eat all night, and then they would sleep late, and the next morning, and the women would be cooking all day, and they were fasting too. So darn, that just seems that would be hard, but that is it comes back down to basically the as above so below. As we do at the beginning, it's going to continue, and so you get rid of as much as you can. You banish everything that you don't like. Unlike when you just freeze something, it is better in this to burn things and get rid of them. There's a lot of bonfires. Getting rid of the bonfires are very big on New Year's. I'm not sure if they are doing the Wicker Man. That had become a great thing in Scotland. In Edinburgh, they burn a big Wicker Man. But I think it was canceled last year, and whether or not they're doing it again, I don't know. But that is just getting together with people, gathering together. Makes it kind of hard when we are still not sure if gathering together is quite safe. But being with friends, if you have a pod, if you have people that you know or you're exposed to regularly anyway, and you're pretty sure they're all safe to be around, getting together with friends is a thing. The drinking, the excess that we have come to expect in the United States is not necessarily a part of most New Year. Drinking, getting happy, you're supposed to drink up to the point where you're happy, not to the point where you're going to be hungover. But that is, I'm not sure. I'm just trying to, it just occurs to me that, do you want to be doing the polar bear plunge when you're hungover or not? Is that going to make it worse or better?
Make it worse, actually, because you're still dealing with the breakdown products of the alcohol, all of which increase your tendencies towards hypothermia.
But most of the ones, especially the ones that are associated with the Gregorian January 1st New Year's, are associated with the gifts, drinking, loud noises, fireworks in the modern world, and fire. Candles are a big thing. To finish up the season, the last Tuesday of January, in the Orkneys, or the Apelia is where they burn they dress up as Vikings and they burn a Viking ship.
Yeah, that's the Orkneys.
And
the Orkneys.
And I hate to dispel the myth, but this was actually developed right after the Napoleonic Wars were ended, and the guys came home and they needed some way to burn off all of that testosterone, and so they came up with, let's dress as Vikings and burn a ship. But it's been popular, and it never went out of fashion. Has gotten bigger and bigger ever since then. I know when I first heard of it, it was supposed to be an ancient ritual that went back a long time, but we have discovered,
well, by American standards, 1814 is a very long time.
Yes, well, it's longer than any of our relatives can remember, so that counts as a long time. And just remember, America's barely, well, it's 250 years old. Is it 250 yet? Not quite. But we're quite a young nation when it comes down to that, although older than some of the ones that came up after the French Revolution. So, but yeah, so this is, do you have time tomorrow and the next day to get your house cleaned? Or if not cleaned, you can ritually clean it. You can dispel negative
I'm going to clean
energy.
the stove New Year's Eve to make sure that that's clean, and that's about the only thing I can manage. This house is too much of a, let's not get into it.
This is too big and too deep and too tall. We cannot clean it up. There's no way at all. Thank you, Dr. Seuss.
Bingo.
But unless, of course, you have a magical cat that's going to come in and help you. But we can fill our cupboards, or we can eat things which are sweet, and we can eat things that are round, and we can eat things that are, anything that symbolizes health and happiness to you. That's what you should be having. Anything that represents, this is the time tomorrow and the next day, go through your closets and find all the clothes that you just hate to have, and just get rid of them. This is the time to get rid of them. This is a get rid of it part of the year. We are, most of us on the Gregorian calendar, and Janus, the god of new things, who looks forward and backwards, is going to be watching us, and we can look forward. This is, I didn't mention New Year's Eve, brilliant time for divination. You can do all kinds of great divination, anytime during the night. You don't have to do it at midnight. You can do it once the sun is down. Go for it. Do your divination. Do a reading for everybody in your house if you do divination. Find out what the upcoming year has to hold. And remember, the point behind divination is so that you can direct your future. If it comes out with a reading that you don't like, change the rune, change the card, change the pebble that you've cast so that it has, this is moving from divination to magic. Do that. You can get your divination and then you switch it on to, I am directing the energy into something I want. Because that's the point behind all of these New Year good luck things. The ones that aren't there to show that you've got larger cojones than the other guys around you do. Yeah, so that's it. Are there any other people that are good, people going to be, did you have any questions, or did I leave anything out you happen to remember? I was amused to know it's very, they didn't have any New Year's in May or in August, so apparently that's not a big thing, or even in November. So they're clustered usually around the spring and in the fall. It's very cool. Except let's see, the Attic calendars, they had 4 different. In Athens, they had 4 different calendars. They had the calendar for the rituals. They had the calendar for the state occasions. They had the calendar for the lunar calendars, solar calendars, and calendars with stars. Yeah, if you're running on 4 calendars at once, no wonder that you can really say that that it's an arbitrary decision. And so if you don't have it, if it's not the good day for you, it's fine. Doing a wedding for my New Year's Day. Taking down holiday. Oh yes, finishing. You should always finish. There are many things that say your New Year's, your Christmas, your Yule celebration, your Yule decorations must be down by the day after the 12th night. That is something that you're supposed to get. Your house whites, the brownies, are allowed to pinch the housekeeper or the maids once for every needle or holly berry that's left behind. It's like, okay, yes, we know that they prefer it clean, and but that giving them a little leeway, I think that the mistress of the house made that one up. So anyway, so that's it. At least it's not a pinch for every piece of glitter. Oh, good heavens. Yeah, there's enough hostility with us when you open up the envelope. We got one card this year that we squeezed the end, and the bottom of it was fatter because of the glitter that was inside switch off the new Yule log. What we do with our tree now, of course, we have a wood stove, is when after we take the decorations off, we take clippers and we take all the branches. You know how they talk about how flammable they are? They make great tinder for starting fires with. And ever since we started doing that, I am not lost an ornament to putting the tree out with an ornament. Anyway, so that is it for tonight. I will tell you what I've got next year, but I am not next week. Well, yeah, next year. See you next year, guys.
Yes.
In 2000.
Have a happy New Year.
Kindly, and don't display your calendar until, blessings to all of you and have a good New Year. We can try and make 2021. That is a 5. 2022 is a 6. So that should be a lot better year. That'll be more pleasant, I think, numerologically speaking. So anyway, blessings on all of you, and see you next year. Have a wonderful, wonderful New Year's. if this is one of the ones you celebrate, and we will see you anon. Bye. See you. Bye.